Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure, and I want to thank everybody for staying, and so many people to attend this late evening session. My background, has been said, really relates to intellectual disability and ageing, and I've worked for longer than I care to remember, particularly in the field of disability, but looking at dementia in people with Down syndrome. And what I want to do today is to share with you, I suppose, some of our work that we're doing, and how Ireland, one organisation where I've been a policy advisor for the last about 10 years, has responded to the issue of dementia. And I will show you a quick 3-minute video clip at the end on the service we have developed. I'm not sure if any of you have ever had the privilege of visiting Ireland, but as you can see, we're a tiny little country, very small little dot beside the rest of the world. This is a bigger shot, and for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to visit Trinity College, that's the institution where I currently work. In Ireland, we have what's called a National Intellectual Disability Database. Not many countries have this, and this collates information on all people in Ireland who are in need or receipt of services. So this is very useful. It's an administrative database, so it enables at government level for us to plan and understand the needs of this population. My long-term interest, of course, has been in those who are aged 35 years and over. And as you can see here, back in 1974, about 28% of the population were within that category of age 35 years and over. But in 2013, this has risen now to almost 50%. So what you're looking at is changing demographic trends with increasing trends in aging prevalence rates. And this is a major issue because many people with intellectual disability did not survive previously into old age. And I do want to say that we should be celebrating the success of old age in people with intellectual disability, and particularly those with Down syndrome. We must remember that back in the 1930s, the average life expectancy for somebody with Down syndrome was 9 years of age. People now with Down syndrome can live to their 50s, 60s and 70s. So I think this is something we should certainly be celebrating. And the reason that they're living longer is simply because we have better care. This here is an important graph. It's taken from Professor Holland's work and some of his work in the UK. And this here is those people with Down syndrome, the meta-analysis of the various studies which have been done. This is learning disability from other etiology in the blue, and this is the general population in the red. And as you can see from this slide here, we're looking at increased risk of dementia in people with Down syndrome, happening at a much earlier age and much higher prevalence rates. So the prevalence that we are seeing in people with Down syndrome in their late 40s to 50s, we're not seeing that prevalence rate in the general population until people really are aged 80 and over. Now, in relation to those with ID from other etiology other than those with Down syndrome, certainly across the studies, and particularly the like of Professor Sally Ann Cooper in the UK and other work, would suggest that people with ID from other etiology are about 5 times greater risk of developing dementia than are a similar age-matched cohort from the general population. I'm not 100% sure. I just feel we don't have good longitudinal data on this population, and I feel we will have, hopefully, moving forward. But certainly, they're going to be at equal risk as the general population. In Ireland, we are running what's called a longitudinal study on generic ageing called TILDA. Many of you may be very familiar with the TILDA study. It's absolutely mimicked on major longitudinal studies all around the world, such as the Health and Retirement Study in the US, the British Longitudinal Study on Ageing, and other studies on ageing which have happened throughout the world and is currently happening. But none of those studies have ever included people with an intellectual disability. So this is the first time in history that people with an intellectual disability have ever been included in tandem with a generic ageing study. So I want to thank my team at Trinity for having the confidence and I suppose the bottle to decide that this was worthwhile. And because we had the National Intellectual Disability Database, I was able to get access to that and to randomly select 10% of the total intellectual disability population aged 40 and over. TILDA, for the general population, included 10% of the general population aged 50 and over. We included people 40. So not only are we able now, we have just finished 2 waves of data collection, we are now preparing for the next 2 waves. And we're using the very same outcome measures as the general population, as well as including some specific measures to address the unique issues for people with an intellectual disability. That is the IDS TILDA website, so people can access it and you will find out, hopefully, copious information about the study. So it is very exciting, and it's very exciting now as we prepare to move into the field for the next 2 waves. But just to say that the prevalence of dementia in people with Down syndrome doubled for over a 3-year period, from 15.8% to almost 30%. And also to say, many of you, I'm not sure if you are aware of the association between the development of new onset seizures in people with an intellectual disability or in those with Down syndrome who develop dementia. With almost across the studies, 80% of people with Down syndrome has developed Alzheimer's disease will develop new onset seizure activity. The prevalence of new onset seizure activity in the general population who develop dementia is estimated to be about 10%. And here you can see in this population, again, the increased prevalence, the new incidence of epilepsy in this population. So this really, and the issue for dementia, Ireland has launched just recently the National Dementia Strategy. I fought hard to ensure that people with intellectual disability were represented centre and core in that strategy, because if they're not in a national strategy, they're nowhere going to be mentioned when it comes to resources. So really, it is changing demographics, looking at this ageing population, big challenges to the current service model, which was very much set up on the fact that these people will continue to live healthy and well. And I think when we were developing perhaps the current model, we never realised that people would reach old age and these would throw up additional challenges. The need now for us to restructure residential and day programmes and the need to upskill staff at different levels in the organisation to respond to changing needs. I was brought out of Trinity for a period to act as a policy advisor to one large organisation, the Dorset Charity Service, to go into that organisation and to see how might they address the challenge of ageing. And what I'm going to share with you in the next number of slides is exactly what we did and how we did it, and give you some references where you can see this in greater detail. But what we really were looking at there in this organisation was to look at the current state of the organisation, helping them to develop a vision as to where they might go, determining the gap between current state and the vision that they have, setting a direction. I developed a strategic plan and a very astute business plan to go with it. Then I have implemented that strategic plan and continued to evaluate it. And I want to thank one of my colleagues, Evelyn Riley, who's here with me today, who really is now core for continuing its execution. So really, I very much use Tockrum's concept mapping. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but I have a chapter written, I'll give you the reference for, and you can see that in detail. Very much was around getting a steering committee together and various work groups to support the preparation of the strategic plan. We developed key focal questions and a whole process around the generation of ideas, and then aligned the proposed actions with the current science on cognitive concerns and best practice around dementia care. And then we set a purposeful and informed selection of action items. So we did a very comprehensive strategic analysis of the organisation, looking at the demographics, using the age-specific prevalence data that had emerged, and predicting the likely numbers to develop dementia across the organisation in the next 5, 10 and 15 years. We did a very comprehensive analysis of staff training and support needs. We did focus group interviews with staff, clients and families, really wanting to know what was their vision, what type of a service would they like. So the service that we currently have, there's huge data behind this, is very much built on the feedback that I received from all of these groups. Formated then a strategic planning working group, we created a vision and a mission, and we developed, as I said, the dementia plan and business plan. These were the 4 questions that I gave to everybody. What do you want that you don't have? What is it we are trying to achieve? What do you want that you already have? What is it good about the organisation that you want to preserve? Because sometimes when we go about developing something new, we forget to identify what's really strong that we want to hold on to. What don't you have that you don't want? What is it that you actually want to avoid? And what do you have now that you don't want? What is it that you want to get rid of? I gave those 4 questions, and all I can say to everybody was they generated great data. They were suitable right across the groups that I worked with, and we got really good information. So then, consistent with the vision, the Daughters of Charity service, the vision was that there would be a comprehensive, seamless delivery of service to address the holistic needs of people with dementia, of their peers, family and staff carers. So oftentimes when people think of a dementia service, they think of a memory clinic, or else they think of a dementia home. They think of either or, perhaps maybe both. I see 5 components to a dementia-specific service, and certainly setting up a comprehensive memory clinic for the screening and clinical support of people was key. There is huge issues around diagnostics in this population. Many of the generic memory services simply do not have the capability, the education or the expertise in understanding dementia and how it's diagnosed in this population. So we have a lot of people actually not diagnosed, and that is a huge problem. I also wanted to develop a continuum of residential options to support the needs of people with different stages of dementia. And one of the things that came back from the groups that I interviewed was that they wanted to remain in the home of their choice for as long as possible. But people also recognised that despite their best efforts sometimes to give care with comfort or with safety, that sometimes a setting outstrips its capacity to give care. And then where do you move that individual to? And people did not want people moved to a generic nursing home. They didn't want people moved into large institutions, because we were used to a model where we were talking about 4 or 5 people living together, and we didn't want to go back to the institutional model which we had previously came from. Also, we needed an appropriate day programmes, a comprehensive training and education programme for staff, family and peers, and then research to guide practice and policy. So they are the 5 components of the service which is now up and running. So the memory clinic has 2 clinical nurse specialists which really run it, along with a support from a multidisciplinary team. We see people with Down syndrome aged 35 years and over. There's currently over 200 people with Down syndrome now in the memory clinic. There's a very well-developed system for comprehensive diagnostic workup. There's a referral process now for people from other services, and we have developed a minimum data set to support the tracking of changes and the utility of instruments, and then we offer expert advice to other services. So it's now extending to other services across the country. This is data here from a 14-year longitudinal follow-up of people that we have assessed through that memory clinic over time. This is what the comprehensive diagnostic workup looks like: full physical examination, neuroimaging and neuropsychological testing using standardised measures. This here is just from that paper which you can read, but it just shows you the risk for developing dementia, about a 20% risk at 50, that risk increasing substantially to 40% at 55, but the risk increasing substantially to 80 in people aged 65 and over. And looking at survival, we did some survival analysis on this data, and this is important because previous to this, people felt that people with Down syndrome, the duration of dementia was quite short. As you can see here, we're looking at a median survival of over 7 years, which is probably more useful from clinical services. We have developed a very comprehensive education programme. We have on-site, and this runs all the time. It's obligatory that everybody in the organisation who provide care and support to people with dementia undergo training. We have a peer training curriculum to support other people with intellectual disability, and then we have biannual training for families. These are dementia standards which we have developed across the services. And I just want to show you a very quick video now of a new dementia homes. We have 2 homes, one 6-bedded home for people with end-stage dementia and an 8-bedded home for people with mid-stage dementia. Okay, thank you.